My name is Evelyn Mercer. I'm 38 years old, and the night my boyfriend told me he was engaged to someone else, he did it over candlelight, pasta, and a bottle of wine I had paid for. That is still the detail that lingers. Not the ring, not even the words. The wine. Because there was something especially cruel about the way the evening had been arranged to feel soft, domestic, almost tender. The kitchen smelled like garlic and butter. The dining table was set properly, not casually the way it usually was on weekdays. Cloth napkins, 2 wine glasses, the good plates. Adrian had even lit the small candle I kept on the sideboard for holidays or nights when I wanted the house to feel warmer than it was. He was 33, charming when he wanted to be, careless when he thought he could get away with it. And that evening, he looked almost luminous with private excitement. I remember walking into the dining room and thinking maybe he had finally gotten some kind of promotion. Or maybe he was about to tell me he'd figured out what he wanted to do next. Really do, instead of floating from one vague plan to another while I covered the mortgage, the utilities, the groceries, and most of the life we both pretended to share equally. He smiled when I sat down, a bright, nervous smile. "I have something to tell you," he said. I reached for my glass. "That sounds ominous." "No," he laughed softly. "Good ominous." I almost smiled back. Then he rested his hand on the table. That was when I saw the ring. It was large enough to catch the candlelight. A clean diamond, set in a way that announced itself before anything else in the room could. It looked new. It looked expensive. It looked very much like something I had never seen before. I stared at his hand for a second too long. "Adrian," I said slowly, "what is that?" His smile widened. "I'm engaged," he said. At first, my brain did something merciful and stupid. It assumed he was joking, that maybe this was some bizarre setup, that the punchline was coming half a second later. It did not. He held my gaze and said with genuine happiness, "To Vanessa, we've been seeing each other for months, and I proposed yesterday." I put my fork down so carefully it didn't make a sound. The house felt very still. Outside, somewhere beyond the window over the sink, a car passed. I remember that too. Headlights sliding across the glass while my life quietly split into a before and an after. "You're engaged," I repeated. "Yes, to another woman." He nodded, almost relieved that I was following. "While living in my house." His expression changed only slightly, as if that detail were emotionally inconvenient, but not central. "Yes," he said again, "but I wanted to tell you the right way." I looked at him. There are moments when your body understands something before your mind catches up. My face felt cold. My hands felt steady in a way that had nothing to do with calm and everything to do with shock. "The right way," I said. He leaned forward like he was asking for maturity from me, like I was the one being called into emotional adulthood. "I know this is a lot," he said, "but I thought it would be better to be honest. Vanessa and I are serious. We've been building toward this for a while." "For a while," I repeated. He exhaled, as if I were making him do emotional labor. "Evelyn, please don't make this uglier than it has to be." I laughed then. I could not help it. The sound came out sharper than I intended, but softer than he deserved. "Are you having some kind of breakdown?" I asked him. "Is that what this is?" His face hardened. "No, I'm in love." That sentence landed between us like something oily. He said it with conviction, with innocence almost, as if love were a magic word that made all logistics noble, as if betrayal became beautiful if framed correctly. "With Vanessa," he added. "She understands me in a way." I held up a hand. "No," I said, "don't do that. Don't sit in my dining room and give me the poetic version." He blinked. For the first time, he looked slightly unsettled. I pushed my chair back and stood. My knees were weaker than I wanted them to be, but my voice wasn't. I walked to the cabinet near the kitchen archway, took out the bottle of scotch I kept for guests I actually liked, poured myself a small glass, and drank before turning back to face him. He was watching me carefully now. "Say it again," I said. His brows drew together. "What?" "The practical version." I leaned against the counter, glass in hand. "Not the destiny speech, not the soulmate speech. The actual version. You've been sleeping with another woman for months while living in my house, eating my food, using my money, and now you're engaged to her. That version." A flush climbed his neck. "That's not fair." I almost smiled. "No," I said softly. "What's not fair is what you thought this conversation was going to be." He stood up too then, defensive, restless. "I didn't want to blindside you." I stared at him. "You made me dinner to tell me you're marrying someone else. I thought we could handle this like adults." "And what does that look like to you?" He hesitated just long enough to expose himself. I figured. He glanced away, then back at me. "Obviously, things will change now, but I thought maybe we could work out some kind of transition. Maybe I stay here for a month or two while Vanessa and I find a place, just until things settle." For a second, I genuinely said nothing. Because sometimes a person reveals themselves so completely that silence is the only proportionate response. His face, meanwhile, had the strained patience of someone who thought he was asking for something reasonable. A month or two, in my house, while engaged to the woman he had been cheating with. I set my glass down. "Pack your things," I said. He frowned. "What?" "Pack your things." His mouth opened, closed. "You can't be serious." "I am extremely serious." "Evelyn!" "You have 2 hours." His whole body changed then. The softness dropped away, the careful tone, the fake sensitivity. It all vanished, and what was left underneath was indignation. "I live here." "No," I said. "You lived here, past tense." He laughed once, bitterly. "You can't just throw me out because you're emotional." I stepped closer. "You announced your engagement to another woman at my table," I said quietly. "You do not get to call me emotional because I finally understand who I'm standing in front of." His jaw tightened. "That's illegal. I have rights." "Do you?" I asked. "Show me the lease, Adrian." He said nothing. "The deed?" I asked. "Nothing." "A utility bill in your name?" He folded his arms. "I receive mail here. You receive mail because I let you use my address. I've been living here for over 2 years." "As my boyfriend," I said. "Not my tenant, not my husband, not my dependent child. My boyfriend, who just informed me he's engaged to someone else." He pulled out his phone then. I watched the decision form on his face a second before he made it. He hit record. "Okay," he said, holding the camera up. "I'm documenting this. You're threatening to throw me out with nowhere to go. This is abusive." I looked at the phone. Then I looked at him. The saddest thing was not that he was doing it. The saddest thing was how prepared he seemed. As if he had already imagined this moment and cast himself in it as the wronged one. I reached into my pocket, took out my own phone, and unlocked it. His expression flickered. "What are you doing?" Calling his bluff felt almost too easy. I pressed the number and lifted the phone to my ear. 911, what's your emergency?" Adrian's eyes widened. "Yes," I said, still looking directly at him. "I need assistance removing someone from my property. My ex-boyfriend just informed me that he is engaged to another woman and is refusing to leave my house. Yes, I'm the homeowner. No, he is not on the deed. No lease, no utility bills in his name." He took a step toward me. "You actually called the police?" I turned away slightly and continued answering the dispatcher's questions with calm, precise details. My name, my address, the nature of the domestic dispute, the fact that there had been no physical violence, the fact that I wanted officers present because the situation was escalating and I no longer trusted him to leave peacefully. By the time I hung up, the candle on the table had burned lower. The pasta was getting cold. So was he. "They're on their way," I said. His face had gone pale with rage. "You're unbelievable." "No," I replied. "What's unbelievable is that you thought I'd let you stay." He stood there in the dining room of my house, wearing the look of a man who had just realized his performance was not going to work. "Not on me. Not tonight." I picked up my glass again, took one slow sip, and said, "You now have 1 hour and 52 minutes. The police arrived in less than 20 minutes. Long enough for the air in the house to curdle. Long enough for Adrian to pace between the dining room and the hallway like he was rehearsing outrage. Long enough for him to drag one suitcase out of the closet, then abandon it half open near the stairs because packing would have meant accepting this was real. Long enough for me to clear the table, put the untouched pasta in the trash, and rinse the plates with a steadiness I did not entirely feel. I remember thinking, absurdly, that I did not want the kitchen to smell like dinner anymore. I wanted nothing in that room that belonged to the version of the night I had walked into. When the doorbell rang, Adrian was standing by the island with his arms folded, his phone still in his hand like it was some kind of shield. I opened the door. 2 officers stood on the porch. A woman in her 40s with tired, intelligent eyes and a younger man beside her who looked alert in that careful, professional way officers do when they are trying to gauge whether they are stepping into heartbreak, violence, or plain stupidity. In our case, it was the third one. "Evening, ma'am," the older officer said. "You're Evelyn Mercer?" "Yes." "You called about a domestic property dispute?" "I did." She nodded once. "Mind if we come in?" I stepped aside. The younger officer glanced past me and immediately saw Adrian standing in the kitchen under the pendant light, handsome in a practiced way, already arranging his face into the expression of a wounded innocent. That almost made me laugh again. Almost. The older officer asked for identification, proof of ownership, the basics. I handed over my driver's license and the digital copy of my deed on my phone. My mortgage statement was already open. So were the utility bills. I had not planned my life around moments like this. but I had always been organized. It turned out that organization could look a lot like self-defense. Adrian watched me with growing disbelief. I don't think he had imagined I would be this prepared. Or maybe he had imagined the law would bend around emotion the way people in his life always had. The older officer reviewed the documents, then looked up at him. "Sir," she said, "is it true that you were asked to leave tonight after informing the homeowner that your relationship had ended?" Adrian gave a short, humorless laugh. "That's a pretty manipulative way of framing it." "Then frame it for me," she said. He straightened. It was subtle, but I knew the posture, the polished voice, the softened tone. The version of him he used with receptionists, with waiters after sending food back, with older women he wanted to charm, and men he wanted to seem non-threatening around. "We've been together for years," he said. "I live here. She's upset, obviously, and I understand that, but she can't just throw me out with nowhere to go because we had a difficult conversation." The younger officer asked, "Do you have a lease?" "No." "Do you pay rent?" Adrian hesitated. "I contribute." "How?" That silence was beautiful. He lifted one shoulder. "Groceries, household things. I mean, we shared a life." I spoke before the officers had to ask. "He has never paid rent," I said. "Never contributed to the mortgage. Never paid utilities. The grocery charges went on my card. His phone is on his own plan, and that's the only consistent bill he pays. Everything in this house comes out of my account." The older officer turned to him again. "Is that accurate?" His jaw moved. Not words, just frustration looking for an opening. "It's more complicated than that," he said finally. "No," I said, "it really isn't." He shot me a warning look, as if I were embarrassing him. That was when something in me cooled even further, because embarrassment was still where his mind lived. Not betrayal, not reality, not consequence. Just embarrassment. The older officer glanced between us, then said, "Sir, without a lease or a clear rental agreement, this can become a civil matter if you choose to contest it. Tonight, our advice is simple. Gather your essentials, leave voluntarily, and resolve any property dispute through proper channels." Adrian stared at her. "You're taking her side?" The younger officer spoke this time, and there was a faint strain in his voice, like he was trying not to say what he was clearly thinking. "We're not taking sides. We're responding to the facts." Adrian let out a sharp breath and ran a hand through his hair. "This is insane," he said. "I've lived here for over 2 years." "As her partner," I said. He turned toward me. "Would you stop saying it like that?" "Like what?" "Like I was some kind of squatter." The word hit the room and stayed there. The younger officer's expression changed first, then the older officer's. Not because I had said it, because he had, and because somewhere inside himself he knew exactly how it sounded. The older officer folded her hands loosely in front of her. "Sir, where were you planning to stay tonight?" He hesitated again. That tiny pause told the whole story before he even answered. "I was going to work something out," he said. "With your fiancé?" I asked. His eyes cut to me, furious. The younger officer blinked. "Your fiancé?" I met his gaze. He informed me over dinner that he's engaged to another woman. They've apparently been seeing each other for months while he was living here. For a second, no one said anything. The younger officer actually looked at Adrian, then at the dining table, where the half-burned candle was still standing in the middle of the place settings, like evidence from a crime scene too stupid to be fictional. The older officer inhaled slowly through her nose. "Sir," she said very evenly, "is that true?" He crossed his arms. "That's irrelevant." "It absolutely is not," she said. Something shifted in the room after that. Not legally, maybe, but socially, humanly. The officers had come into a domestic removal call expecting a messy breakup. What they found instead was a man who had announced another engagement while still living in the house of the woman he had been deceiving, and who nonetheless expected to remain in the property until it became convenient for him to leave. There are facts. Then there are facts that humiliate you simply by being spoken aloud. Adrian looked at the younger officer and tried one last time. "She's overreacting." The younger officer stared at him for half a beat too long. Then he said, "Respectfully, sir, I don't think that's the issue here." I had to look away to keep my face still. Adrian did not cry immediately. First he got louder. Then he got righteous. Then, when neither of those worked, he got wounded. He started talking about how cruel this was, how unstable I was behaving, how there should be a process, how I was trying to destroy his life because I couldn't handle the truth. Every sentence sounded less convincing than the one before it. Even he seemed to hear it. He kept adjusting the story as he told it, trying to find the version that would make him sympathetic. But sympathy requires coherence. And guilt. He had neither. Finally, the older officer said, "You need to start packing now." He looked at her in disbelief. "I am packing." "No," she said, "you're performing." That time I did laugh. A short sound, I couldn't help it. His face snapped toward me with naked hatred. And that was the moment it truly ended for me. Not the ring, not the confession, not even the entitlement. That look, that furious, exposed look of a man who realized strangers could see through him and decided it was my fault. He went upstairs hard enough to shake the banister. The officers remained inside while he packed. I stayed downstairs, mostly because I didn't trust him in the house anymore, and partly because I refused to stand in the bedroom watching him touch drawers, closet doors, and parts of my life as if he still belonged among them. From upstairs came the sounds of drawers slamming, hangers scraping, things being dragged and dropped without care. Then the phone call. I didn't hear her voice clearly, but I heard his. Vanessa, I need you to answer me honestly. Can I come there tonight? Pause. What do you mean not tonight? Another pause. No, I'm serious. I'm leaving now. His voice dropped lower after that, sharper and more desperate. Bits of it floated down the stairwell. I told you she'd make this difficult. That's not the point. You said we'd figure it out. Then, after a long silence, well, where am I supposed to go? The answer, whatever it was, made him swear. A few minutes later, he came downstairs with one large suitcase, one duffel bag, and the brittle dignity of someone trying to pretend this was temporary. The older officer looked at the luggage. Is that everything you need for tonight? He said no. Then prioritize. His eyes flashed to me. What about the rest of my things? I folded my arms. Text me. I'll have them ready outside. I'm not trusting you alone with my stuff. You should have thought about trust before tonight. His nostrils flared. The younger officer stepped slightly between us without making it dramatic. Sir, let's keep this moving. Adrian looked around the house then. Really looked. At the staircase, the framed prints in the hall, the living room sofa he used to nap on in the afternoons, the kitchen where I had paid for every stupid artisanal coffee bean he liked and every expensive olive oil he insisted tasted better, the front windows, the polished floors, the life. For the first time, there was something like panic under his anger. Because until that second, some part of him had still believed he could talk his way back into comfort. And comfort was over. He set his suitcase down hard. I need my car keys. I stared at him. My car? I asked. The one I've been driving. The one registered in my name? He pressed his lips together. I need transportation. I walked to the ceramic bowl near the door where I kept spare keys, picked up the set he meant, and held them for 1 second before slipping them into my pocket instead. No. His whole face changed. What? That car belongs to me. You let me use it. When you were my boyfriend. Are you serious right now? Yes. The older officer said, Do you have your own vehicle, sir? He muttered something under his breath. No, I answered for him. He sold his last year and never replaced it. Adrian turned toward me, stunned by the simplicity of my cruelty. But it wasn't cruelty. It was inventory. That is one of the things people like him never understand. When you stop cushioning reality, they call it brutality. He took out his phone again and started tapping with jerky movements. Probably ordering a rideshare, probably texting Vanessa, probably both. Then, as if one last scene were required of him, he looked at me and said, You're going to regret this. The house was quiet enough that the sentence landed cleanly. I looked at him, at the ring still on his hand, at the man who had sat across from me an hour earlier and expected applause for detonating my life politely. Then I said, Probably not as much as you're going to regret making your engagement announcement over my dinner. The younger officer actually coughed to hide a laugh. Adrian heard it. That was the last humiliation he could stand. He grabbed the suitcase handle, jerked the duffel bag over his shoulder, and headed for the door. The older officer followed him out. The younger one lingered just long enough to give me a brief nod that was almost human, not official. Then they were all on the porch. I stood inside the entryway and watched through the glass as Adrian waited on the curb under the porch light, alone with his luggage. He looked smaller out there, not physically, structurally, like the outline of him had changed. A black rideshare finally pulled up. He shoved the suitcase into the trunk, climbed into the back seat without looking back, and disappeared down the street. Just like that. 4 years, reduced to taillights. The older officer came back to the door before leaving. Ma'am, she said, change your locks tonight. And if he has any codes, garage access, gate access, anything like that, change all of it. I already called a locksmith. Her mouth moved, almost a smile. Good. I'm also adding cameras. Even better. She glanced past me once more into the house. Document every interaction from now on, she said. If he comes back angry, do not argue through the door. Call us. I will. After they left, I locked the front door and leaned against it for a few seconds. The silence inside the house was enormous. Not peaceful, Not yet, just enormous. There were still 2 wine glasses on the table, one candle burning itself into a pool of wax. A chair slightly pulled back where he had sat to tell me he belonged to someone else, and still expected to sleep in my house afterward. I walked slowly through every room downstairs before going up, not because I was sentimental, because I needed to see what was left, what had been touched, what might still feel contaminated in the morning. The bedroom upstairs looked ransacked, closet doors open, empty hangers swinging, a few shirts he had left behind in his rush, the bathroom counter missing his razor, his cologne, his toothbrush. Strange how quickly absence can make a room look honest. At 10:30, the locksmith arrived. He replaced the front lock, the back lock, the side gate lock, and the code pad on the garage. After he left, I sat at the kitchen island with my laptop open and changed every password I could think of. Wi-Fi, alarm system, streaming services, shared shopping accounts, delivery apps, even the stupid thermostat. At 11:15, I ordered 3 more cameras. At 11:40, Adrian texted, "You didn't have to do this like a criminal." I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then another message came. "Vanessa says you're vindictive and unstable." Then another. "I need the rest of my clothes and my things from the bathroom." Then, "You're humiliating me." That one almost moved me. Not emotionally, narratively. Because at last, there it was, the truth beneath all the others. Not grief, not heartbreak, not fear, humiliation. He could survive betrayal. He had practiced that from the side doing the betraying. But he could not survive being seen clearly. I typed one reply. "Text me a list. I'll arrange pickup. Do not come here unannounced." Then I muted the conversation, turned off the candle stub still sitting on the table, and stood alone in the middle of my kitchen. The room smelled faintly of extinguished wax, garlic, and metal. The kind of smell that comes after something has burned down without flames. I should tell you I cried then. That I collapsed against the counter and sobbed for the years I had wasted. That I shattered all at once, because that would sound cinematic in the most obvious way. But that isn't what happened. What happened was quieter, more dangerous. I stood there in bare feet and silence and realized, with a clarity so cold it almost felt peaceful, that the worst part was not losing him. It was understanding how completely he had misread me. He had believed I would absorb the insult, delay the consequence, protect his comfort while he transferred his loyalty elsewhere. He had not just cheated on me. He had built a whole future on the assumption that I would make his betrayal convenient. That was the wound, and that was also the cure. Because once you see the shape of someone's entitlement, you cannot unsee it. Around midnight, I locked the bedroom door too, not because he could get in anymore, but because I wanted the sound of one more barrier between us. Then I got into bed alone, in the center this time, and listened to the new emptiness of the house. My phone lit once more on the nightstand. A message from an unknown number. "Vanessa, you didn't need to throw him out like that. He just needed time." I stared at her name, at the audacity traveling through the dark. Then I set the phone face down without answering. Because by then, I understood something I hadn't understood at dinner. Adrian had not arrived in my life alone. He had arrived with an audience already forming around him. And this was only the beginning. I woke up to silence. Not the kind you get at 3 a.m. when the world is temporarily paused. This was different. This was structural silence. The kind that settles into walls after something loud has been removed. For a few seconds, I lay still, staring at the ceiling, trying to remember what was missing. Then it came back. Not in a rush. Not like panic. Just clarity. Adrian was gone. The space beside me was undisturbed. No weight. No indentation in the mattress. No faint smell of his cologne clinging to the sheets. Just clean fabric. Clean air. Clean absence. I sat up slowly. My phone was already lighting up. Notifications stacked on top of each other like something trying to get my attention faster than I could process. Missed calls. Messages. Unknown numbers. Instagram tags, mentions. For a second, I didn't touch it, because once I did, the outside world would start telling me a version of last night, and I already knew how those versions usually sounded. Still, avoidance is temporary. I picked it up. 67 messages, 30 missed calls, 12 Instagram notifications, and one name repeated more than any other, Adrian. I didn't open his thread. Instead, I scanned the others. His mother, 3 missed calls, a voicemail. I pressed play. "Evelyn, this is completely unacceptable. I'm hearing you threw Adrian out last night. I don't understand what's going on, but this is not how adults handle things. Call me back." Her voice was sharp, confident, certain. The voice of someone who had already been given a story, and believed it. I ended the voicemail without reacting. Then I checked the Instagram notifications. That was where it got interesting. Adrian had posted. Of course he had. A black screen with white text. Classic. Sometimes you give everything to someone, and they still treat you like you're disposable. Healing starts now. Below it comments. Support. Confusion. People asking what happened. People assuming. People choosing sides without knowing there was more than one. I scrolled. There it was. A second post. A photo of his suitcase. Homeless because I chose honesty over comfort. I actually laughed out loud. Not because it was funny. Because it was so predictable, it felt scripted. And then, the comments shifted. Someone asked, "Wait, weren't you living with your girlfriend?" Another, "Didn't you just get engaged?" And that was when I realized he had already told his version, but not carefully enough. The cracks were showing. I locked my phone and got out of bed. The house felt different in the morning light. Not empty. Defined. Like everything had sharper edges. I walked downstairs barefoot, taking in details I hadn't noticed in years. The way sunlight hit the floor near the window. The absence of his shoes by the door. The clean counter. The quiet. I made coffee. Real coffee. Not the expensive, overly specific beans he insisted on. Just something simple. Ground. Honest. While it brewed, my phone rang again. This time I answered. "Hello?" "Evelyn." His mother's voice, immediate and tight. "What is going on?" "Good morning," I said calmly. "This is not a good morning. Adrian called me last night in pieces. Said you threw him out like a criminal. I asked him to leave my house after he told me he's engaged to another woman." Silence. Then, "I'm sorry, what?" "He's engaged to Vanessa. They've been seeing each other for months." The silence stretched longer this time. Not confusion. Processing. "He told me," she started, then stopped. "He told me you two had already broken up, that you were basically just living together." "Is that what he told her too?" I asked. Another pause, then quieter. "I need to call you back." She hung up. Just like that. No defense. No accusation. Just withdrawal. I set the phone down. That was the first fracture. Not mine. His. Around noon, the second one arrived. In person. The doorbell rang. I checked the camera before opening. A woman stood on the porch. Mid-30s. Controlled posture. Expensive coat. The kind of composure that comes from believing you understand the situation. "Vanessa." "Of course." I opened the door. She looked at me like she was measuring something. "Evelyn," she said. Not a question. "Yes, we need to talk." "No," I said, "we don't." Her jaw tightened slightly. "Adrian is in a terrible situation right now." "Adrian created his situation. You threw him out with nowhere to go." "I removed him from my house after he informed me he was engaged to you." She blinked. Once. Slow. "He told you," she said. "Yes." She folded her arms. "He said you knew about us." I leaned against the doorframe. "He told you I knew?" I asked. Vanessa held my gaze for a second too long. "He said you two were already over, that you were basically just sharing the house." "That's interesting," I said, "because I found out about you at dinner last night." She didn't answer right away. The confidence in her face didn't vanish, but it slipped. Not dramatically, but enough. A crack. "You're lying." "I'm not." "He wouldn't." "He did." Silence again. Different this time. Less confident. I stepped back slightly, not inviting her in, just creating enough space for the truth to settle between us. "He asked to stay here for another 2 months," I added. Her eyes snapped to mine. "What?" "After announcing your engagement." She stared at me, and for the first time since she arrived, she looked uncertain. "Why would he?" "Because he thought I'd allow it." That landed, harder than anything else. Because it wasn't just about me anymore. It was about what kind of man she had agreed to marry. She looked past me into the house, taking it in. The scale of it, the order, the stability, then back at me. "He has things here," she said, regaining some ground. "Furniture, clothes, personal items." "He has clothes," I said, "and a laptop." "The bedroom set." "I bought it." "The living room." "I bought that too." She frowned. "He said you shared everything." "I paid for everything." That one didn't need emphasis. It spoke for itself. Her shoulders stiffened. "We're coming to get his things," she said. "Text me a list," I replied. "I'll have them outside." "We're not waiting for your permission." I smiled then, not warmly, not kindly. "Try it." Her eyes narrowed. For a second, I thought she might push. "Test it. Walk past me anyway." But something held her back. Maybe the cameras. Maybe the tone. Maybe the quiet certainty that she was no longer standing on stable ground. "He's staying with his sister," she said finally. "Good," I replied, "she can pick up his bags." Vanessa exhaled sharply. "This is humiliating for him." I looked at her, really looked, then said, "He announced he was marrying you while living in my house. If this is the part that feels humiliating, your standards are very different from mine." She didn't answer. She just turned and walked away. No dramatic exit. No final line. Just a controlled retreat. That was the second fracture, and it was louder than the first. I closed the door, locked it, and stood there for a moment. Not shaken, not angry, just aware of the pattern, of the unraveling. Because this wasn't over, not even close. People like Adrian don't disappear quietly. They rewrite, they escalate, they gather sympathy. And when that doesn't work, they push harder. I walked back into the kitchen, picked up my coffee, now lukewarm, and took a slow sip. Then I opened my laptop, pulled up my bank statements, my purchase history, every receipt I had ever ignored because I trusted him, and started organizing. Folders, dates, proof, because something was coming. And this time, I was going to be ready before he even decided what story to tell next. By the third day, Adrian stopped calling me. Not because he had nothing to say, because he had found a different audience. I didn't need to guess. The notifications told me. Mentions, tags, messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Mutual friends, acquaintances, even a former coworker of his who had somehow decided I was now part of a public narrative. I opened Instagram again. This time he wasn't subtle. A video. Him, sitting in what looked like his sister's guest room, face slightly shadowed, voice low and controlled. I didn't want to do this, he said into the camera, but when someone tries to destroy your life, you have to speak your truth. I paused it, sat back, closed my eyes for a second, then pressed play again. She threw me out with no warning, no time to prepare. After everything I gave to that relationship, I stayed quiet for a long time because I didn't want to embarrass her, but there's only so much you can take. The comments were already flooding in. Stay strong. Men go through abuse too. She sounds toxic. And then, one comment. Simple. Sharp. Didn't you just get engaged? He ignored that one. Of course he did. I let the video finish. Then I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and poured myself a glass of water. Cold. Clear. I wasn't angry in the way people expect. I felt focused, precise, like something inside me had finally aligned. Because here it was. The escalation. The rewriting. Exactly as expected. I carried the glass back to the table, sat down, opened my laptop, and began. Not emotionally, not impulsively, methodically. First, I took a screenshot of his video, saved it, time-stamped it. Then I opened my messages with him, scrolled, selected, saved. 4 days before the dinner. I love you. I know I've been distant, but it's just stress. We'll fix this. 2 weeks before. Can you transfer me $800? I'll pay you back next month. Last month, charges on my credit card. A spa. 2 people, time-stamped, location tagged. Vanessa had commented on that post. I didn't need to guess who the second person was. I built it slowly, like a case, because that's what it was now. Not a breakup, not a relationship, a record. When I was done, I opened Instagram again, found his post, and replied. Just once. No paragraphs, no emotion, no insults, just facts. Interesting narrative. Here are some facts. Then I posted the screenshots, one by one, clean, clear, undeniable. His I love you message, his money request, the spa charge, the timeline, the engagement, all of it. I didn't caption them beyond that. I didn't need to. The silence around them did more work than any explanation could. Then I closed the app and waited. It didn't take long. 5 minutes? 10. 15. Then, the shift. Comments changed. Tone changed. People started asking different questions. Wait, you were still together? Why is he asking for money if he was leaving? This doesn't add up. And then, the best part. Not from strangers. From his side. His friend. Bro, what is this? Another. You told us you guys broke up months ago. Then, Vanessa. No comment. But she deleted her previous one. That told me everything. I closed the app again. Set the phone down. And exhaled. Not relief. Completion. Because that move wasn't about revenge. It was about control. Of the narrative. Of the truth. Of myself. An hour later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Hello? Silence. Then, Evelyn. Vanessa. Her voice was different now. Lower. Less certain. You lied to me, she said. No, I replied. He did. He said you two were already over. He also said the furniture was his. Silence. Then, quieter. He said you were unstable. I almost smiled. Does this feel unstable to you? Another pause. Longer this time. Then, he used your money. Yes. For months. Yes. And you didn't know about me. No. Her breath caught slightly. Not dramatic. Just enough. I need to talk to him, she said. That sounds like a good idea. She didn't respond. She just hung up. Third fracture. This one was internal. and it would spread. That afternoon, another message came. Different name. Melissa. His sister. Can we talk? I stared at it for a moment, then replied. About what? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, came back. About Adrian. I leaned back in my chair. I looked around my house. Quiet, orderly, fully mine, then typed. Call me. She did. Immediately. Evelyn, she said, voice tight. I'm so sorry. For what? For everything. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know he was still living with you like that. What did you think? That you guys were basically done. That you were just sharing space. I closed my eyes briefly. There it was again. The same lie. Repeated. Believed. Expanded. He told everyone that, I said. I see that now, she replied. Silence settled between us. Then she exhaled. He's staying with me, she said, and I can't do this. I said nothing. Let her continue. He won't stop talking about how you ruined his life, but then I saw your posts, and the messages, and the everything. Her voice cracked slightly. Not emotional, overwhelmed. He hasn't offered to help with anything. Not rent, not groceries. He just sits there, on his phone, posting, messaging people. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table. How long has he been like this? I asked. She didn't answer immediately. Then, longer than I want to admit. That was honest. Painfully honest. He said he's coming back to get his things, she added. No, I said. He's insisting. Then he'll be disappointed. Silence. Then, he mentioned the car. I smiled slightly. Of course he did. You reported it? Yes. Another pause. Then, a small disbelieving laugh. I didn't think you'd actually do that. I didn't think he'd actually get engaged while living in my house. That landed. Hard. She exhaled again. He's unraveling, she said quietly. Good. The word came out before I softened it. I didn't take it back. Because it was true. And for the first time, I wasn't cushioning the truth for anyone. Not for him. Not for his family. Not for myself. That night, just after 9, the doorbell rang again. But this time, I didn't need to check the camera to know. Because the pounding came immediately after. Hard. Aggressive. Impatient. I walked to the monitor anyway. 4 men. Adrian. And 3 others. His friends. Or what he thought were his friends. He was shouting now. Open the door. I didn't move. Evelyn, I know you're in there. I tapped my phone. Dialed. Put it on speaker. 911, what's your emergency? I kept my eyes on the screen. My ex-boyfriend is outside my house with 3 other men. They're attempting to force entry. Outside, Adrian circled toward the side of the house. One of his friends followed. Testing. Looking. Trying. I spoke clearly into the phone. They've been told to leave. They're trespassing. The dispatcher's voice was calm. Units were already being sent. Good. Outside. One of the men reached for the sliding door. Jiggled it. Pulled. Harder. That was enough. I watched. Silent. Still. Documenting. Because this was the moment. Not the dinner. Not the breakup. Not the posts. This. The escalation. The part where the mask slips completely. Where entitlement turns into action. And action turns into evidence. Blue lights appeared at the end of the street within minutes. Fast. Very fast. Adrian froze. His friends stepped back. Too late. The police stepped out. And this time, there was no confusion. No neutrality. Just consequence. I watched from inside. Calm. Still. Untouchable. As everything he had built collapsed. Right there on my driveway. Blue lights have a way of changing the temperature of a situation. 1 second, you're loud. Certain. Surrounded. The next, you're very aware of where your hands are. I watched through this camera as the officer stepped out of the car, movements controlled, eyes already scanning the scene. 4 men, 1 house, 1 report of attempted entry. No ambiguity. Adrian tried to recover first. Of course he did. He stepped forward, hands raised slightly, voice shifting into that same practiced calm he always reached for when he thought authority might be persuaded. Officers, this is a misunderstanding, he said. We're just here to collect my belongings. She's refusing to let me. One of the officers cut him off. Step back. Simple. Firm. Final. He blinked, then tried again. She stole my... Step back. This time he listened. Behind him, one of his friends glanced toward the side yard where the sliding door was. That was the mistake. Because one of the officers had already seen the footage. I had sent it while they were on the way. The tugging. The attempt. The intent. They didn't need to ask. They already knew. Who tried the back door? The second officer asked. Silence. The kind that doesn't hide anything. One of the men shifted his weight. Too late. You, the officer said, pointing. No, I... Turn around. The click of handcuffs is not loud, but it echoes. especially when it's the first real consequence in a chain someone thought they could control. Adrian's composure cracked instantly. "What are you doing?" he snapped. "This is insane." The officer didn't even look at him. "Attempted breaking and entering, trespassing. You were warned to leave." "We weren't breaking in," one of the others said quickly. "We were just trying the door," the officer finished. Silence again. Different this time. Smaller. I stayed inside. Didn't open the door. Didn't step out. Because this wasn't a conversation anymore. It was a record. Adrian looked toward the house. Toward me, even though he couldn't see me through the glass. "I just want my things," he shouted. I didn't respond. Didn't move. Didn't give him anything to push against. Because that's what he needed. Resistance. Emotion. Engagement. Without it, he had nothing. The officer turned to him. "You've been told to leave this property. You've returned with others and attempted entry. You are now trespassing." "She has my property," he insisted. "Do you have proof of ownership?" the officer asked. He opened his mouth, closed it, looked at his friends, at the house, at the ground. Exactly. The officer nodded once. "You'll receive a citation. If you return again, you will be arrested." The words landed, harder than anything I could have said, because they weren't emotional. They were procedural, final. The friend in cuffs was led to the car. The others stood frozen. And Adrian, for the first time since the dinner, looked lost. Not angry, not performative, just lost. Because the system doesn't respond to narratives. It responds to facts, and he had none. After they left, the street went quiet again. The kind of quiet that follows something loud being corrected. I waited a full 5 minutes before moving. Not out of fear, out of discipline. Then I walked to the door. Checked the lock. Checked the camera feed again. Empty driveway. Good. I turned off the porch light and went back inside. Sat at the kitchen table and exhaled. Not relief. Not satisfaction. Just completion of a step. Because this still wasn't over. Not yet. The next morning, the call came. "Janet, his mother," I answered. "Evelyn," she said, voice softer this time. "Can we meet?" I didn't answer immediately. Because tone matters. And hers had changed. From certainty to something else. "Why?" I asked. "I need to understand what's real." I considered that. Then said, "There's a coffee place on Maple, noon. I'll be there." She looked different in person. Smaller. Not physically, but structurally. Like something she believed in had shifted. She sat across from me, hands wrapped around her cup, not drinking. "I'm sorry," she said. No preamble. No defense. Just that. I didn't respond. Let her continue. "He told us you were separated," she said. "For months. That you were basically just sharing space." "I know," I replied. "He brought her to family dinners," she added. "Said you were never around. That you didn't care anymore." I almost smiled. "I was working," I said, "paying for everything." Her eyes dropped. "I see that now." I opened my folder, turned the laptop toward her. Bank statements, payments, receipts, dates. She didn't interrupt, didn't question. She just watched. And with every scroll, her expression changed. Not dramatically, just heavier. "She asked you for money," Janet said quietly. "Yes," while seeing someone else. "Yes." Her lips pressed together. "We raised him wrong," she said. That landed. Because it wasn't about me anymore. It was about pattern. "He's always been like this," she continued. "We just made excuses, smoothed things over, fixed what he broke." I leaned back slightly. "That stops now," I said. She nodded. "Slow." "I know." Then she reached into her bag, pulled out an envelope, pushed it across the table. I didn't touch it. "What is that?" "5,000, she said. "It's not enough, but it's something. For what he took from you." I stared at it, then at her. "You don't owe me anything." "We do," she said firmly. "We raised this. We enabled it. That's on us too." Silence settled. Then I took the envelope, not because I needed it, because she needed to give it. "Thank you," I said. She nodded, then added quieter. "He's already having problems with her." "Vanessa?" "Of course." "She thought he had money," Janet said. "Stability. She's realizing now he doesn't." I didn't react, because that wasn't my story anymore. That was theirs. "He's asking her for money now," she continued, "just like he did with you." Of course he was. Patterns don't disappear. They relocate. "He says he's going to sue you," she added. That almost made me laugh. For what? Emotional distress, illegal eviction. I leaned forward slightly. "Let him try." She studied me for a moment, then nodded again. "He doesn't understand who he's dealing with," she said. No, he didn't. That was the problem. That had always been the problem. That evening, Melissa texted again. "He's losing it." I replied. Define losing it. 3 dots. Then, posting nonstop, calling people, saying you're trying to destroy him. I stared at the message, then typed, I'm not doing anything. Pause. Then, exactly. I set the phone down, looked around my house, still quiet, still clean, still mine. And for the first time since all of this started, I felt something close to peace. Not because it was over, but because it was no longer mine to carry. He had taken his chaos with him, and now it was unfolding exactly where it belonged, away from me. By week 3, the noise had changed. Less public, more desperate. That's how you know the narrative isn't working anymore. It doesn't disappear. It retreats. Behind calls, messages, legal threats that sound serious until you actually read them. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning. Certified mail. Heavy paper. Important font. I already knew what it was before I opened it. Inside, a cease and desist from a lawyer whose name I had never heard before, demanding return of his property, compensation for emotional distress, and $50,000. I read it once, then again. Then I sat down at the kitchen table and laughed. Not loudly, just enough, because there it was. The final version of the story he had told himself. That he was the victim, that I owed him. That if he escalated hard enough, reality would bend. I picked up my phone, called my lawyer, sent the documents over, then waited. Not anxiously, not nervously, just patiently. Because this part I understood better than he did. Beso. My lawyer called back that afternoon. He didn't greet me. He didn't soften it. He just said, he's serious? Yes. Pause. Then, a short laugh. He announced he was engaged to someone else while living in your house. And now he wants money? That's the summary. Another pause. Then, I'll handle it. And he did. 3 pages. Precise. Cold. Professional. The kind of letter that doesn't argue. It ends things. No. And counterclaim pending. 2.5 years of back rent. Market rate. $48,000. Plus utilities. Plus documented expenses. I read it once, closed my laptop, and went back to my day. Because that was the difference. He escalated emotionally. I responded structurally. 2 days later, his lawyer dropped him. No explanation. No follow-up. Just gone. Which meant one thing. He tried to continue on his own. That was worse. Much worse. He filed something. 17 pages. Unstructured. Emotional. Accusations without grounding. Words like emotional terrorism and love discrimination. I didn't need to go to court to know how that would end. But I went anyway, because I wanted to see it. Not for revenge. For closure. He stood on the other side of the room. Same face. Different posture. Smaller. Less certain. When the judge read through his filing, it took less than 5 minutes. Dismissed. No basis. No standing. No case. Just like that. He tried to speak. Tried to explain. Tried to reshape it one last time. But the system doesn't listen to narratives. Only structure. And his had none. But that wasn't the end. Because people like Adrian don't stop when they lose. They shift. They relocate. And in this case, he relocated into Vanessa's life. Fully. Completely. Without buffer. Without me. Without my house. Without my money. Without my silence. Week 7. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Evelyn? Adrian. His voice. Different. Not confident. Not controlled. Thin. I need your help. I leaned back in my chair. Looked out the window. Sunlight across the floor. Quiet house. My house. No, I said. Please, he continued. She won't leave. I didn't answer immediately. Because for a second, I wanted to hear the full sentence. She's not on the lease, he said quickly, but she won't go. She's threatening to say I assaulted her if we try to make her leave. There it was. Full circle. Same pattern. Different house. Different victim. Same script. And you thought to call me? I asked. You got me out in one night, he said. I need you to tell me how. I closed my eyes briefly. Not from emotion. From recognition. Because this was the moment. The one where everything connects. You called the police, he added quickly. You had cameras. You documented everything. I need to know what to do. I almost smiled. Install cameras, I said. Silence. Then, what? Document everything, I continued. When she threatens something, record it, then call the police. Another pause. Longer. He was listening. Actually listening. For the first time, without ego, without performance. Just need. That's it? He asked. That's it. Silence again. Then, thank you. I didn't respond. Didn't soften it. Didn't offer more. Because advice is neutral. Forgiveness is not. He hung up. And just like that, the last thread between us was gone. 3 months later, everything had settled. Not perfectly. Not cleanly. But honestly, Adrian was back with his parents. Job unstable. Online presence quieter. Less confident. More vague. Vanessa, gone. After the threats escalated. After the truth surfaced. After she realized he wasn't who she thought he was. Melissa, still texting me occasionally. Not about him, about herself. Therapy. Boundaries. Growth. Janet, sent a card. Another check. Didn't need it, but I understood it. And me, I was fine. Better than fine. The house was quiet. Not empty. Peaceful. Clean. Mine. I started seeing someone new. Slowly. Carefully. He had his own place. His own life. His own stability. The first time we went out, he insisted on splitting the bill. I remember staring at him for a second, then laughing, because it felt normal. And that was the strangest part of all. Not the drama. Not the betrayal. Not even the collapse. Normal. Quiet. Equal. That was what felt unfamiliar. A few weeks ago, I ran into one of Adrian's former friends. At a bar. He didn't recognize me at first. Then he did. And he said something that stayed with me. She told him she was pregnant, he said. I didn't react. She used that to pressure him into proposing, he continued, while she was still with you. I nodded once. The timeline made sense. In the worst way. When he realized she was lying, he added, that's when everything exploded. Of course it did. Because lies don't collapse quietly. They take everything with them. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how I handled it. If I could go back, would I have done it differently? Would I have given him more time? More understanding? More space? I always give the same answer. No. Because the dinner wasn't the betrayal. The expectation was the belief that I would make his betrayal comfortable, that I would adjust my life around his choices, that I would stay while he built something new on top of what I had given him. That was the line. And once you see that clearly, there is no going back. My house is quiet now. My bills are lower. My mornings are calm. There are no surprises waiting at dinner, no performances disguised as honesty, no one asking me to make their betrayal easier to live with. And Adrian? He's not my story anymore. He's just someone else's problem.